Hello, Internet, and welcome to another episode of the Chase Jarvis Live Show here on Creative Live. I am very happy to be with you for the next 60 or so minutes, and I am very excited to introduce our esteemed guests. Before we do, just a couple of housekeeping notes. I want to welcome you from wherever you may be tuning in from today. I know I can see from the chat all over. We've got Facebook. We're live on Instagram Live, on Periscope, on, I think one or two others at least, and of course at creativelive.com/TV. And I also want you to know, along with in this sort of housekeeping segment here, that I do see all of your comments from whatever platform you're on. And yet the best experience, what I see the comments that come onto my screen first are at creativelive.com/TV. If you click join chat up there, that will be the way to get those questions percolated up the fastest. And it's my goal to usher some of those questions to our guest today. Of course, I'll be trying to see the question volume and curate those questions in a manner that's going with the flow of the show. But please feel free to ask them. That is one of the ways that you can impact and control the show, help contribute to the broadcast today. I do want to say thank you for everyone tuning in from all over the world. And I see we've got folks joining from Brazil. I don't even know what time it is in Brazil right now, but we've got Brazil, New York, fellow Seattleites. Nice to see you in the house. New York, London, Esparto, California, from Lynn Faustine. Thank you, Lynn. In short, we've got a worldwide global audience. And that is a good cue for me to get into the introduction of our guest. Again, this has been a long time coming. I've been working on this guest for probably 6 to 12 months. Ijoma Iluo is a Seattle-based writer, speaker, and I love this, an internet yeller. She's the author of the New York Times bestseller, So You Want to Talk About Race, which was published in January a year ago by Seal Press, named one of the Root's 100 most influential African Americans in 2017, one of the most influential people in Seattle by Seattle Magazine, one of the 50 most influential women in Seattle by Seattle Met, and winner of the 2018 Feminist Humanist Award by the American Humanist Society. Our guest's work focuses primarily on issues of race and identity, feminism, social and mental health, social justice, the arts, and personal essay. She's been featured in the Washington Post, NBC News, Elle Magazine, Time, The Stranger, The Guardian, and others. It brings me great pleasure, and please, wherever you are in the world, tap on your desk, tap on some keys, raise your hands. Welcome Ijoma Iluo to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And fellow Seattleite, we are using the internet, but we are probably like 2 miles apart as the crow flies.
Yeah, I mean we have driven away. We took a little socially distanced vacation down the Oregon coast right now, so I am the furthest away from you I've been in 4 months.
Well, I hope it's pleasant, not because it's further away from me, but some much deserved time. I know it's so hard to get space when you lived in the space for the last however many months. Thank you so much for being on the show. And we were making some small talk as in the 5 minutes before we go live when we were checking connections and whatnot. And we recapped something. I was asking you if there's some things we want to talk about. And one of the items that was on I got a half a dozen here that I want to talk about. One of them is the fact that the book is really 3 years old, or 3 years old since you wrote it, 2 years out in the market. And a lot of people are asking you, it's like you're on book tour and you already did that. And so I thought an interesting place to start our conversation is around how context matters so much, and yet not really relative to the work that you're doing. It's everything and nothing simultaneously. And now here we are at a very impactful moment in time, and yet the book that you wrote 2 and 3 years ago is atop the New York Times best-selling book list here. So what has changed for you, and how has the conversation changed since your book has come out, now that we're years into the book's life?
Oh yeah. So, I would say I started writing this book probably 2016. It came out January 2018. And where I am as a person is, huge. I mean, that was my first book. And I definitely thought the book had, reached the peak of what it was going to reach in the few months after it came out. And then to see it selling now more than it ever had sold before is very strange. And I would say that, it's interesting because when I wrote the book really talking about the day-to-day discussions around race, right? How to talk about race with your coworkers, your family, like how to deal with these day-to-day issues, how to look at these day-to-day issues. And so it was weird for me to see this book being used at a time when we're talking, where we're collectively outraged and grieving and talking about, these huge structures of police brutality. For people to be like, wait a minute, what's this problem? What's going on? Let me start and see this issue, because that's not at all how I had envisioned the book being used. I really had envisioned. I even remember writing, in the beginning chapters of the book, talking about people who are just now coming to realize this was an issue, and so then, to realize, oh wait, there were this many more people that were just now waiting now years later. Um, but it's also interesting to see because I think that there's some parts of the book where I feel like the conversation has moved far beyond what I was talking about, especially looking at the chapter on police brutality,
Mm-hmm.
and seeing the conversation move and wishing you could have kind of a real time update of work as it goes.
Yeah.
But I'm glad the conversation has moved past. Is there a problem? Is police brutality real? There are some people who hang on to that, but I think the conversation we're having right now is, how do we dismantle this system? Do we defund the police? And that's progress. It's not as fast as I think any of us would have wanted it to be. It's certainly not as fast as activists, even 50 years ago, talking about, police violence would have wanted it to be. But it is definitely progress.
Well, I just I have the original version, and I've got the Kindle version, which has an updated preface that I found really interesting, and it in some ways references the conversation that you and I are having right now. And the discussion guide, it points to the discussion guide at the end, which was incredibly helpful for me. And asking people who are prepared to read the book, maybe in a book club setting, what did you hope to get out of the book? And that makes me want to ask you, now 3 years on, has the book done for you what you hoped it would? And are we just getting started, or has it, where are we in the journey of your writings?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say the book itself was a primer, right? So I wasn't looking at it and saying, oh, I'm going to change the world with this book. I was thinking, well, hopefully we can get past step A, if people read and engage with the book. And I do think that for a lot of people, it's done that. And that's been wonderful to hear. Like, I hear from people email me, they message me all of the time saying, I brought this book into a meeting because as a Black person in this office, I couldn't stand being talked over anymore. And I was able to use the discussions in here. I was able to talk about these points. I've heard from, couples who are saying, I never understood my partner's lived experience, but now I'm realizing that maybe I've been harmful in the way I've been acting like this isn't happening. It's been interesting to see orgs use it. It's even been interesting to see people not use it. Someone emailed me, and it was really interesting. They messaged me saying, she had been hired from a place where they literally had brought my book out during the interview, and she was being hired for an equity position. And this white woman was using the book like to kind of guide her questions, and she was like, oh, okay. And so she had first reached out to me to tell me about this, and I just thought that was kind of hilarious. And had like the phonetic spelling of my name on the book, which was really cute. But then, one thing that she said that was interesting was what she noticed was my book was everywhere. And my book was really clear, and it was very clear that people weren't actually using the book. Like, there was this piece of material, this reminder everywhere that was of how to have productive conversations, how to not get caught up in your own fragilities. And people weren't doing it. And it was like, she was like, it was really actually helpful to say, this was right here. You've been quoting this and you're not doing any of this. You're actually not committed to this work. So even when it's not being done, I've found in some places that's useful. But people actually have to read the book. That was one of the shocking things, was to realize that, this book has been out as long as it has. And it takes something this drastic for people to be like, let me find that 101 guide. In numbers, I would say I've sold more copies of this book in the last month than I have sold in the last 2.5 years.
Wow.
And that's great and horrifying at the same time to realize, okay, this is what it takes to be in the beginning stages. Because I think many of us who do this work would have hoped that by this stage people would have been like, where do I talk methodology? How do I actually burn this down? Like, what do I rebuild? And moved on to far more radical works, far more strategic works. But it's better than never,
Yeah.
which is a really sad thing to say. I'm so
Yeah.
tired of saying it's better than never. But but it is, and for anyone who has for any BIPOC people who has an easier path, maybe because someone who has influence in their life is starting this path, I'm
Yeah.
grateful for it.
Yeah. I remember somewhere, either, I don't remember if it was in the discussion guide or in the, somewhere in the book, you talked about it, unsexy fundamentals, as in not like flashy, what was the, quick takes or something.
Mm-hmm.
It's not those things. It's these unsexy fundamentals. And yet is it this fundamentals that we need as a culture? And if fundamentals is something that, the way I think about fundamentals is it's the base of the pyramid. It's where it is required, because if you can't have the top of the pyramid without the bottom of the pyramid. And it just strikes me that in a way this work will always be relevant. And we want it to not be relevant in the future. This is part of the dichotomy that I'm trying to get through and to understand for you as the creator of this work. Is it both? How does it feel to have something be?
Sorry, 1 second. Sorry, I'm so sorry. Malcolm, no, please stop. Go away. No, okay, that's fine. The ice machine is a bit much. I'm sorry. This is quarantine life right now.
I love it. I love it.
I'm like, I need things to be quiet. I'm going to do an interview. And then I hear fridge, garbage crumbling. And then I hear the ice machine start. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I just can't. I can't.
Oh, it's awesome. It is. We've all had those moments, as you said, in quarantine.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering, I'm trying to understand the emotional space that you're holding with respect to have created something that is, as you mentioned, unsexy fundamentals. But if we're still relying on the fundamentals, it means, almost reflexive of the conversation you just shared with me, that we haven't moved forward. How is that? How does that resonate with you? And is it frustrating, or do you look at it as required for us to go forward?
I think that part of what needs to happen right now, because it is frustrating, and I think that, like I've been trying to say right now, is right now you have to learn and do it at the same time. We can't do this whole, something horrible's happened, people are dying, let's start a book club, right? It's just not, we can't keep doing this. People's lives are depending on action. And so what we need to realize, I think, right now is, okay, you know what? I've missed something. I am missing out on something big I don't understand. And I need to look to the people who've been fighting this and talking about this and saying something's wrong for a long time. I need to listen to what they say and educate myself at the same time. And you have to run both tracks.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that the education is important. The fundamentals are important. But we absolutely cannot wait for another whole generation to learn the fundamentals and act. We will never catch up. What we need to do is to do both at the same time. And I think that oftentimes people hide behind let me see how much more information I can gather about this. Let me get a PhD in this before I do anything. Let me have more discussions before I do anything. I can't write anything that hasn't been written before. I can't say anything that hasn't been said before. We are over 400 years into the horrible system of violent white supremacy in this country. And it's been said. We're all trying to just find a new way to get people to pay attention, a new angle to try to get people to understand what we've been saying for hundreds of years. So you have to, at some point, trust that the people who are being impacted the most by this system actually have an idea as to what needs to happen, or give it a try. Why not? Because what's worked right now isn't working, right? Like, that's the thing right now, is there's so much, people are so frozen right now, even in these discussions about should we defund the police. What if it's chaos? I mean, it is chaos. It's already chaos. We have people right now being pepper sprayed in the street. We have people being murdered in the street. We have all these abuses happening. That's and chaos we know. Why not, if it can possibly help things, take a leap for the chaos you don't know. Give it a try and learn while you do and read while you do and catch up. But people have to do both right now. People have to start treating this like an emergency.
Brilliant. Taking a step back from the content for a moment, I'm fascinated by personal journeys, and I wanted to explore yours for a moment. Specifically, the audience who's listening is broadly identifies as creators and or entrepreneurs. They are hoping to tap into that thing that they were put on this planet to do, and the whatever medium people are pursuing and whatever content they want to pursue, to me, is separate from the journey of deciding to become or step into the person or the role that you have always wanted to play and either didn't have the awareness or the courage, or there's some other thing that was keeping you from the thing. And I was curious if you could walk us through your transformation from, your technology, or however you describe your earlier work, to being a writer. Because to see you having put out such an amazing body of work, and I understand we'll talk a little bit more in the near future here. You got another book coming out and a movie, but for someone who's probably 10 years or 10 steps away from their dream right now, could you walk us through your process for moving from not doing the thing that you were put on this planet to do to the role that you're currently playing, which is obviously impacting millions?
Yeah, definitely. I feel very fortunate, honestly, to know, that I'm doing the thing I'm supposed to be doing right now. Whether that's my forever thing, I don't know. But I know with certainty, in a way that I haven't known before, that this is what I'm supposed to be doing at this moment. And, it's something that came to me it wasn't even a choice. I started doing this work. I had loved writing as a child. Loved writing as a child. Writing was my number one thing, and it was definitely, I was that, unicorn kid, right? Partially being like usually the only black kid in every classroom, and that nerd that, defied a lot of racist expectations. People were like, "Ooh, let me invest in this child. She loves books," and writing was it. And I had so many teachers tell me, write your first book for me, put my name in the acknowledgments. And I had never considered after the age of maybe 10 that I was going to be a writer. And that's simply because I grew up poor, and, poor and black, and the thought that I would have something that unsure, and especially when there were so few role models that were being brought to me, in the writing space, to show that, a poor black person, and of course they absolutely existed. And I grew up, adoring Maya Angelou, adoring Toni Morrison, adoring Lorraine Hansberry, but they were definitely treated like exceptions, And I knew that, for me, it was, are we going to keep the lights on? And we definitely, we'd slept in cars at times as kids, and we were not just like, oh, we're a little broke. It was, we didn't have a phone for 3 years. We would go weeks without electricity, we ate at churches. And so for me, I knew that I was smart. I knew that I was talented. And I always knew I would be able to translate that. I would find a way to translate that into being able to escape the poverty I had grown up in. And that was my goal. That was my goal as a parent, as a person. And I think that oftentimes especially Black people in this country, are taught, but actually most BIPOC people I know are taught that financial success is its own revolution, right? If you can get to middle class status, if you can pay your bills every month and buy your kids the things that you couldn't have, then you will have accomplished something real and you will have gotten as close to freedom as you can get, you know? And we grew up in like that Cosby Family age, right? That story. And what I realized as I got older was that was not going to happen. That I was never going to be a whole person anywhere I went. I was never going to not just be the Black person in any space, even as I succeeded. And the more I succeeded, the more I was going to be tied to being able to take every abuse and, you know, every slight. The more I was going to lock myself into having to constantly work twice as hard as my white peers. And I was still going to feel unsafe. I was still one traffic stop away from mortal danger. I was still going to worry for my brother, for my sons. And I didn't want to be 60 and still trying to figure out if I had the right to say something. So I started writing just for myself to kind of counter the general gaslighting that happens in Seattle and likely other places all around the country. But Seattle is special, you know, in that Seattle really loves to believe that it has it all figured out, that it checked the right boxes on its ballots and it recycled enough things, and therefore racism isn't a problem in Seattle. And it's easy for Seattle to believe that racism isn't a problem because there's like 15 Black people in the whole city. It's a very wealthy city, and those of us who are not wealthy are kind of concentrated in particular areas, hidden away from the vast success and wealth that Seattle has. And add on top of that this kind of weird, you know, enforcement of politeness that prevents you from talking about anything real in the city. What I found as I got older is it really felt like I had fallen through this like veil into an alternate reality. You know, I was walking around traumatized and scared and sad, and people I had grown up with who said they loved me were just fine. You know, and they would look at me and be like, that's weird. You know, you're acting like this. Why are you doing this? And I needed to know I wasn't alone. And so I just started writing really out of desperation. And I'm not even joking when I say like those felt like some of the most desperate years, in the years after Trayvon Martin was killed. Um, I was writing just to like be like, okay, this has to be impacting someone as much as it's impacting me. And from there, I started finding other Black people in Seattle